What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. I'm sure as y'all can see from the gameplay, we are on our Stasis Warlock for an Osmiomancy updated build, freezing everything, being able to take this in anything from just normal ribbons, layers, all the way up to GMs, dungeons, raids, anything like that. With this beautiful build. Obviously, this has been a staple in the Endgame builds since she came out, but with the artifact this season, got an extra little bit of juice to it, so we're going to go over everything from our armor mods, the stats you need to be looking into, our subclass, as well as the weapons that I paired with this build. So starting us off, we are going to go over the exotic perk as well as the stats to be looking for your builds. So I built mine out for resilience, recovery, and discipline so we can get our grenade back, have our rift up as much as possible on our warlock here, and then for that endgame content, 100 resilience just feels easily the best with that survivability. Right here is our exotic perk as well with Fair Vid Cold Snap. Your Cold Snap grenade has an additional charge that recharges quicker on direct impacts. The seeker spawned from the cold snap also travels further, so this just makes the cold snap being able to recharge itself very easy, so us being able to throw out those stasis turrets is the game plan with this build. Now, as for the mods we have on the rest of the build, as well as on our arms, we're going to have that thermodynamic siphon for solar and stasis weapon final blows to give us orbs of power with that grenade kickstarter. Definitely important for this, so when we do run out of our grenade energy, we can get a good chunk of it back, depending on how many charges of light that we have. Bolstering detonation as well, so we get our class ability back for that healing rift when we do damage with our grenades. This also counts as that bleak watcher, which makes it really nice. As for our resistance, whatever you're going into, I went with triple arc just to show you guys you can throw on really anything in these slots. Nothing really too important on our boots. Definitely, if you want, go with something recuperation, absolution to get back our abilities a little bit faster, as well as healing ourselves, with most importantly on our class item besides grenade kickstarter is bomber, so every time we do throw down our rift, which is also why we have that 100 recovery, we get a little bit of our grenade energy back on those, plus Reaper to give us even more potent orbs of power. Moving on to the weapons that I was using with this build, went with the Riptide. Anything stasis in this column feels good with that shield clip for sure, because it applies that slow and you can freeze targets, so we can deal with unstoppable as well as overload just with the Riptide, plus it pairs perfectly with our Shadebinder subclass as well as our artifact. For me, I went with the Abyss Defiant here with Reconstruction Incandescent. I absolutely love this thing for that solar synergy, as well as the Dragon's Breath to pair with those solar ignitions that we're getting from the Abyss Defiant and Radiant, which you will see how we're getting those on our artifact, but that is also why we're using that solar and stasis siphon on our helmet. Onto the artifact that makes all of this possible for this build. We're going to be using that Overload Auto Rifle for our Abyss Defiant, which just helps with those Overload champions because they are easily the worst to deal with. Right here we got the Flame, Fiber, and Freeze, which allows us to have that Solar and Stasis Siphon on our helmet. Now, why we are using a Solar Auto Rifle is because of Flint Striker as well as Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants, and we are getting Radiant by those solar weapon rapid precision hits or final blows, so that allows us super easily to do a little bit of extra damage with our weapons when we're Radiant. Plus, we're going to have Torch. While we're Radiant, we deal increased damage to targets affected by Strand or Stasis, and this build is all about that stasis debuff with slow and freezing, with our cold snap grenades and those bleak watcher turrets just annihilating those enemies. Now, we are going to be using Pillar of Ice as well as Hail the Storm, so shattering encased targets and stasis crystals deal increased damage for that beautiful stasis synergy. Shattering these crystals also release shards of ice that damage and slows targets, which will be right back into Torch, being able to do more weapon damage. On top of that, defeating an encased target spawns stasis crystals, so it is a beautiful synergy of all 6 of these right here with this build this season. When we move on to our abilities and aspects and fragments, I went with our Healing Rift, Burst Glide, as well as our Prenumbral Blast. As for our grenade, definitely need that Cold Snap because that's what gives us the double charge on our Osmiomancy Gloves. Now, right here is the cream of the crop with our stasis aspects, in my opinion, for this build with Bleak Watcher. So you can press and hold that grenade button to convert it into a stasis turret that fires those slowing projectiles at nearby targets. This one allows us to freeze and slow targets, plus that will stun our overload and unstoppables, as well as apply that nice buff on our artifact, which gives us that extra damage to stasis debuffed targets. We're going to be going with Ice Flare Bolts, so shattering a frozen target spawns Seekers that track and freeze nearby targets, so this will also apply to the trackers from our Cold Snaps, which got that increased range from our Osmiomancy Gloves. So these are the perfect two combinations of aspects, in my opinion, for this build. Now, for our fragments, you can go with whatever you want, but I definitely think that these four are the best, or at least how I use this build. Whisper of Torments, we gain grenade energy each time we take damage from a target, so it allows us to get our cold snaps back even faster, especially in that endgame content, because we're taking damage very easily and just very often. Right here, Whisper of Change, while you are frozen to targets or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage, so being able to be around all those stasis crystals that we're creating and frozen targets with our abilities and Bleak Watchers allows us to proc Whisper of Chains very easily. Whisper of Fissures is next, so the burst and damage size of those stasis crystals or frozen targets when we destroy them is nice and juicy, so we can deal even more damage to bosses, champions, whatever it may be, adding to the ad clear potential of this build as well. And finally, defeating slowed or frozen targets, Glance Us class ability. That is because how I kind of described earlier with having a bomber on our class item. Every time we throw down our rift, we're going to get a chunk of our cold snap grenade back, so that's kind of how the gameplay of this build works. Cast your rift down to get back your energy if you need it, as well as converting that grenade, that cold snap, into one of those Bleak Watcher turrets, so you can continuously throw those out, and then when you need your grenade energy back, just make sure you find one of those champions or something that you can throw a couple of them at, and as long as you make contact in the body, or just direct contact I should say, with whatever enemy it is, it'll give you a super big chunk of that energy back. So I basically always try to have one grenade up at all time, throw one out for a Bleak Watcher, use the other one to do a couple direct impacts, so then I will get that second one back, throw one out for another Watcher turret, so you can have 3-4 Watcher turrets out, as well as just throwing a cold snap around by itself. So this build, very, very fun, updated version of the Osmiomancy this season, with that beautiful stasis and solar artifact that we got in Season of the Wish. So hopefully y'all enjoy this build, try it out. There's a dim link down below. If y'all like the content, don't be afraid to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell button so you don't miss out on any of these videos as well. Again, appreciate all that support. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.